Sint Niklaas is a small town in the north of Belgium, in Flanders, situated between Ghent and Antwerp. It's pretty well connected to the rest of Flanders with a highway, 4 train stations. We're pretty well connected. 80,000 inhabitants and not an historic town. We celebrated our 800th birthday just 5 years ago. So it's not a medieval town, and you see that in the way that the city has developed from a very small nucleus to a big urban sprawl city, as there are so many in Belgium. As so many towns of the size of Sint Niklaas, in the 50s and 60s we've become a car-oriented city, and because we're not an historic medieval town, there were very little impediments to actually create big urban highways through the city, and as a consequence we attract a lot of through traffic going from one side to another without really having a destination into our city. In 2015 we approved a mobility plan that actually focuses on 4 main strategies: make biking the most evident way of transport in the city, strengthen bus lines, make better use of existing parking spaces, and the most difficult one is a car circulation plan with the goal to keep cars outside of the city. That last one, or the last 2, were actually the most difficult ones. Make better use of existing parking space and get the car circulation plan implemented, but the 2 go hand in hand. We've redesigned the city centre since 2017, redesigning public space more to cater for pedestrians and cyclists. And so we had to find space, and the easiest way to find space in the city centre is actually to remove on-street parking capacity. We started that program in 2017 and are now, with the redesign of our central markets square, into the one but last phase of that implementation. To convince private parking owners to make their parking publicly available, you need actually 3 things. That's 1, make sure that security is ensured, and so that the police is also doing controls on those private parkings. That's a very important aspect. The second aspect is relieve them from any administrative burden. So we as a city are in between the parking owner and the citizens using the parking. And thirdly, there's a financial aspect. Some owners ask a fee, a rental fee, but we're happy to pay that because it costs way less than buying land ourselves and putting a parking space on there. And there's another financial aspect, is every investment that needs to be done to make it a public parking, for example, access control, we take that cost on ourselves. That's sometimes a big investment budget that we need to implement, but the return is very high. In principle, when you tell the complete story about the problems that people experience from day to day, namely that they don't feel safe on the road when biking, when they come outside, the traffic congestion, etc., and you come with a complete plan that it's going to be better, people do understand that. But as soon as you start with the practical implementation or the practical design of streets, then they start opposing. Taking away parking spaces to create more space for pedestrians and cyclists, and now also to do climate adaptation, to have rainwater infiltrate in your streets, to have more trees, to combat heat stress. Yeah, that's been a very difficult process. When it comes to opposition, you actually have three big groups. You have the inhabitants of where you are changing the plans, but they can be convinced with the promise of investing in the street, because that would mean also that their property, if they own property there, will become worth more. In a nicer street, your property becomes more valuable. But you'll always have opponents in the own streets, but that's manageable. The second group is, of course, political opposition. Political opposition that follow Karl Popper's advice. The duty of the opposition is to oppose, usually with not such convincing arguments, but they get a forum in the press, and that then usually leads to a third group of opponents, is that opposition is being translated in newspaper articles that are being shared online, and then you have a whole group of other people not living in the area, often not even living in the city, that actually strengthen a negative message on social media. You could divide those in two groups. That's the group of people that regularly visits your town and then see it's becoming more difficult to visit the town, although that's not necessarily true. And there's the other group of people that are just negative about more sustainable forms of transport and mobility. And those are the most difficult to handle. The best advice that I can give to opposition, if your inhabitants are there with you, you have a good, as a politician, a good coalition or a good party you're in that support you, is just go ahead. In almost all cases, one accepted, the result is the most convincing argument for people. And with the renewal of our city centre here, when the first part was ready, people saw how it could look, and at that moment a lot of the opposition fell away. So my advice is just do it. When it comes to protests, we are lucky in Sint Niklaas that people are extremely polite here. Except for some harsh words on social media from inhabitants or visitors from our city. Most opposition you get in the form of emails, of visits here, and when we do town hall meetings to explain people what we are going to do, you might have some harsh voices in public, but I have to say that it's all pretty much manageable. We learned a lot from the Corona period in the way we communicate with people, whereas in the past we just organized a meeting with just an invitation letter. We want to talk to you about the redesign of some street, and then we'll explain it to you. We had to change that way of working since people couldn't come together during the COVID period. And we gave them much more information on paper. So we put a nice folder together with a lot of information, with details on the plans, with also the reason why we are doing that. Distribute that across town in a pretty large area, not just the street that we're designing, but also the other streets. And most importantly, we gave people the chance to think about it, to reminisce about it, to talk about it with their neighbors, for example, and then send us via email or via letter or just by calling our client center what they thought of the plans. And that creates ease of mind. People all get the same information, whereas before they had to come to a meeting to get the information. Now people all get the same information at the same time, get time to think about it, as opposed to giving directly your opinion in such a meeting. And that has created quite some rest and has been accepted by people as being more transparent about these changes. So also there my advice would be is you can give sometimes too much information, but too little information is really bad. And inform people before you hold town meetings so that they come informed, or they might not come at all because they got all the information up front. So that's what we learned from the COVID period. The way the media works here in Flanders is we have local journalists following the news of a certain region, and they like the news. Big tip here is to communicate first, because if you communicate first, you can explain your goals, you can explain why you are doing it, and also how you're going to do that. Opposition will react, but they usually be 1 day later or 2 days later, or when it's being discussed in city council. At that moment, well, you don't have the communication in control anymore. So the only moment that you have communication in control is if you're a first mover on that level. And that's what we're trying to do, to keep the message as clean as possible. But taking the media as an ally here with us, that doesn't really work. They need to keep a balanced view, and that's what they're doing as well here. To other colleagues, politicians, I would recommend 3 things. Is first of all, be open in your communication, and especially be clear on what your goals is and why you're going to do it and how you're going to do it. It's very important to put that forward. Second of all is, when doing mobility changes, see if there are opportunities to improve public space and give something back to the people. And third of all, don't wait until everybody agrees, because that moment will never come. The best way to convince people is to just do it. The result, they will like it, I can guarantee you. 1 exception maybe, or 2 exceptions, but in most cases, in my experience, people love the results if they're well thought through and starting from a good plan. In Sint Niklaas, we apply the many steps of what we call participation here, and it starts with information as the basis, and usually for very straightforward projects we just inform and ask feedback on the plans if the plans are already finished. But in the past 6 years we had also 2 tracks where we even did co-creation, where we actually started with just the goals of the project, what we wanted it to be, a vision, but without being very concrete on the how we are going to do that, and then started really designing on paper, on a white piece of paper, how would you, in your ideal world, would design the street or square. And that has led to some pretty good plans. It's always guided by experts, of course. That also explains sometimes why some ideas will not work or cannot work. But on the other hand, it's not it's not foolproof, I would say. I mean, you will always have protesters because they don't agree with the goals that you set forward. And that's important. If you go into communication with the people, you have to make clear what the goals are. Something I'm actually very proud of is the prize we won for public space for cities in Flanders. This is a very prestigious prize for public space projects in Flanders, for cities that actually make a big difference. And this is the prize for the Winkelwandelers, the shopping walking loop, and this is where we removed most of the parking spaces on street and actually improved public space with more green, with more seating comfort, with more room for pedestrians and cyclists. This is a map of the center of Sint Niklaas. We have the train station of Sint Niklaas, and here we have the central market square. And actually, the prize for public space that we won actually is about this whole area in the city center, and it's the most important area in the city center because you have the markets, central market square, of course, but you also have the academies, you have the theater there, and you've got the museums and the shopping street. And so this whole center we are renewing since 2019 and still being busy now on the big square, making it more apt for pedestrians and cyclists in our city center.